まだ
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our press conference. I have the pleasure to introduce my colleagues, Mr. Juan Carlos Lentijo, the Deputy Director General for Safety and Security of the IAEA. We have Mr. Philippe Jamet, who is the IRRS Mission Team Leader, and also Mr. Gustavo Caruso, the IRRS Mission Team Coordinator. And of course, it's a special honor to introduce NRA Chairman Mr. Chunichi Tanaka, the Director General Mr. Yasuhiro Shimizu, and the Director General for Regulatory Standard and Research Mr. Masahiro Aoki. We will start with a few remarks by Mr. Lentijo.
Thank you, Susana. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for attending this press conference. The Integrated Regulatory Review Mission, or IRRS, is one of the essential services designed and provided by the agency to assist its member states in developing and in enhancing their national programs in nuclear safety. Let me congratulate Japan, its government, and the Nuclear Regulation Authority, the NRA, for inviting the IAEA to conduct this IRRS mission. In our view, this proves the commitment of Japan and its institutions to nuclear safety. In fact, the results of the IRRS will be used to further improve the Japan's nuclear safety regulatory system, as the NRA chair has already committed. On the other hand, the results of this IRRS mission will be disseminated to the international community, contributing then to the nuclear safety worldwide. IRRS is a learning process. The self-assessment based on a systematic and robust tool provided by the agency is used initially by the host organization to better understand its nuclear safety system and to identify areas that need further progress. Then, the direct interaction with the international experts of the IRRS team is also an opportunity for further learning, considering, in any case, the context of the IAEA international safety standards and the best practices in the world. The press release gives you a summary of the main outcome of this mission. The final comprehensive report will be published in around 2 or 3 months after the mission concludes today, as a demonstration of the transparency of the IAEA and the host country in conducting this mission. As a conclusion from the mission, Japan has reformed its regulatory system with impressive speed and effectiveness following the Fukushima Daiichi accident. Today, the system provides for clearer responsibilities and greater authority to the regulatory body. The NRA is on a good path to continue this crucial progress in the future, and this work must continue to ensure that the new regulatory system is applied fully to all facilities and activities regulated in Japan. Now, let me give our recognition to all the participants in the mission. Of course, the officers and senior managers of the NRA and other relevant institutions in Japan, the international experts from many well-reputed organizations coming from many countries in the world, and of course, the staff of the IAEA for their tireless and professional attitude to conduct a successful mission. To finish, let me tell you that the agency remains ready to continue supporting Japan and, of course, all other member states in their improvement of the national nuclear security systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we will hear a few words from team leader Mr. Jamal. Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
They worked very hard.
Is it okay? Yeah, I'm not used to the pronunciation in my name in English. Sorry. Okay. So today we are concluding 12 days review mission of the regulatory infrastructure in Japan. This regulatory infrastructure is, of course, for nuclear and radiation safety. 19 experts from 17 countries have worked night and day almost to produce the report that will be issued in 3 months. Our subject was globally the regulatory framework in Japan and the way it is implemented. It's not only paper, it's also how it works as much as possible in the field. Regulatory framework means the responsibility and function of the government and of the NRA, the regulatory body, and other subjects like how authorizations are given, how inspections are performed, and also emergency preparedness and response. The way we worked is that we had meetings with the NRA staff. We also observed some regulatory activity like inspection on site. We had 4 site visits in Takayama, Tokai, Fukushima Daiichi, and I'm forgetting one. Aomori. Okay. And we also met quite a few officials from ministry, utility, and also TSOs. Now, what are globally our conclusions? So, first conclusion is that we were very much impressed by what has been achieved in Japan since the creation of NRA. The government had produced a regulatory infrastructure that allowed, in a very quick time, to establish a competent, independent, and transparent regulatory body. So this was for the government. On the other hand, NRA itself, in a very short time, has produced requirements to increase the safety of the installation, taking into account the lesson from the Fukushima accident, then has reviewed the application from the utilities, and finally, at least for 2 plants, that has approved restarting, or maybe for 5 now, if I understand correctly. So this is really something that the team recognized as a good practice, doing so much in such a little time. The second thing is that the team has identified an important challenge that is now coming for NRA, and that is related to the general context now in Japan. Potentially, quite a few nuclear installations will restart in the following months or years. This means that more and more installations will be in operation, and that means that what we call operational safety, so will become more and more important. And this will be a challenge for NRA, because they will have to make sure that they provide with a very good oversight of this operation. So I think the team thought that this was one of the most important challenges that NRA will have to face in the following years. And finally, the third thing is that we provided NRA with advices or identification of areas where future improvements are necessary, and this is normal. All the regulators get that type of result when they request an IRRS mission. And as an example, we made a recommendation of actions to be performed to increase the competence of staff and to increase the attractiveness of NRA, so that they can hire competent and experienced people. Another example is that we recommended that the global system of inspection is simplified so that it has more efficiency. And the third example I will give, and then I will stop, is that we also recommended that all the actions that are undertaken to increase safety culture within NRA, but also in the utilities, should be enhanced, so that safety culture is as much as possible developed. And this, for example, includes developing a questioning attitude from the staff of NRA and also the utilities. This is all I wanted to say as an introduction. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Jamé. And now I am happy to hand the floor to Chairman Tanaka.
Mr. Lentiho, Mr. Jamé, thank you very much for your kind comments and your elaboration on the outcome of the review. And reporters who are here today know very well that NRA, since was established after the Fukushima Daiichi accident, and we are only the 3-year-old toddler, and because we have been established only for a very short period of time, and even then receiving the international scrutiny through IRRS mission, we felt quite anxious to find out whether our organization is fit for such scrutiny or not. But thanks to the efforts of the reviewers, we have come to the end of the mission activity itself, and I think that it was quite meaningful, significantly meaningful, that NRA at this stage is receiving this mission. And in the meantime, NRA has been striving to recover the trust and the credit by the Japanese citizens in the safety of nuclear operations and installations in Japan. And that has been our main focus. And the general direction has been correct. That is the evaluation given by the IAEA mission, and we feel very much relieved by that general recognition. However, we have no notion whatsoever that we have reached already the level of the one of the most excellent regulatory bodies across the world. And in order for us to become such significantly respected regulatory body, we would like to take into consideration and incorporate the recommendations and suggestions by interpreting and also digesting so that we can reflect all these points in our future activities. And through this review, we had the countless discussions with the review team members, and looking back these discussions, I reminded of the time soon after the whilst we were working on the examination towards the restart, as Mr. Jame also mentioned. And I believe that these our scrutinizing activities towards the restart is going to be one of the crucial aspects of our activities. And for that matter, we need to make sure we can hire and also develop the necessary human resources to fulfill our roles and obligations as a regulatory body, and we would like to do our very best to fulfill this responsibility. And also, at this moment, we are working on the. We have no choice but to putting focus on the examination of the utilities towards the restart. But in future, we would like to pay more attention on the radiological protection and also ERP and EPR, excuse me, and also coordination with other relevant ministries and the regulatory bodies pertains to the radiation and nuclear. And so these things have been pointed out. And this IRRS review is for the Japanese government as a whole. And we would like to look back on the mission itself so as we will formulate the good pathway for the future. However, we feel day by day the shortage in our workforce and the human resources, and that was also pointed out during the mission. And human resource development cannot be completed overnight, but we would like to have a long-term view, and we would like to be proactive and active in developing the necessary human resources. In closing, as Mr. Jame, the leader, mentioned, and as one of the principles of safety by IAEA is about the questioning attitude at all times, and to maintain the questioning attitude towards ourselves. And with that backdrop, the safety culture should be fostered. And with this in mind, at all times, we ourselves would like to make every possible improvement so as to enhance the nuclear safety in this country. And very simply, there are some individual comments I would like to make, but I would like to close my remarks, including my words of gratitude for the mission. Thank you.
Domo arigato, Chairman Tanaka. I now have the pleasure to open the floor for questions, and I would like to request that you identify yourself and your media when you ask a question. Okay. Who's starting? Mr. Amano? Yes, please wait for the microphone because we have interpretation, and otherwise they can't interpret the questions.
産経新聞の天野と申しま
My name
す。
is Amano from Sankei
今
newspaper.
回非常に
And
良好な
in
評
this
価を下されており
review,
ますが、
there's been very
少しちょっ
good
と批判的な観点から
evaluation
観点をお聞きしたい
done,
と思い
and I
ます
would like to ask three questions from
一つ
the
は
critical
ま
point
ず
of
そ
view.
の
And the first question is about the local residents and also the utilities. So there's been criticism that the NRA has not been communicating enough with the local residents and the utilities, and so there's been a criticism that the NRA is, say, isolated and deciding things on its own without really paying due attention to the local residents or the utilities. What do you think?
Thank you. This is a very interesting question. I would disconnect, if you don't mind, the problem of isolation, as you said, of NRA, and on the other hand, local inspector, because I see it, I perceive it as two different problems. I think one of the big principles that was followed in creating NRA is that it should be an independent regulator. And I think this was specifically important after the Fukushima accident. Independent and also transparent. This means that the processes that are taken to make a decision should be fully open and also should be completely independent. This means that whatever discussion there is, or in most important discussion there is between the utility and NRA, this should be publicly open. This is a guarantee that the citizens can make sure that the decisions are taken in a transparent manner. So from that point of view, I think I understand very well why NRA is following this policy, and frankly speaking, I think this was necessary in the context of the wake of the Fukushima accident. For the resident inspector, frankly speaking, we met resident inspectors. The problem of communication, if I understood you correctly, between resident inspectors and Tokyo, if I understood your mission, frankly speaking, it's difficult for us to say anything really relevant on this.
Thank you. Did you have more questions?
Yes, もう一点はですね、原発の審査につい
Another
てお伺い
point
し
is
たいと思いま
about
す。
the
で、
review of the
今原発の審査
NPP
もう
nuclear
2年
power
半以上
plant.
続いております
Over
が、
2.5
非
years,
常に遅れております。
the examination
この
of
原因という
nuclear
のはもちろんその電力事業者
plants
側
is
の
going
準備不足
on,
という
and
の
there's
が非
been
常
a
に
lot
大
of
きな要因
delay
である
in
ん
the
ですが、
process,
もう一つの
partly
点
due
では
to the lack
ここ
of
でも指摘されてい
preparation
るよう
on
に
the
そ
side of
の
utilities.
規制委員会側の
But
人
the
材不
another
足
thing
とい
is
うのがあっ
that
て、
lack of
なか
human
なか進ま
resource
ない
on the part of the
その辺のそ
NRA
の審査
that
の
is causing the
問
delay
題点
in
あるいは効率
the
性と
safety
いう観
review.
点
So
で
in
何かコメン
terms
ト
of
が
the
あればお願いします。
efficiency or issues you identified in the process, do you have any comments to make on that?
Yeah, I understand that it takes time to review the application of the utility. To put this in perspective, it's true that NRA has required a lot to improve the safety of the nuclear power plant, and this is fine. I think this is good. And at the same time, as Chairman Tanaka said, their human resources are limited, and this is true that they have many applications, 20 pending applications, if I remember correctly, and it's true that it takes time. Now, as a regulator responsible for safety, I can understand that the utilities are complaining, but on the other hand, I think this is safety first. So I prefer that they take time and make sure that the plants are really ready for restart, rather than go too fast, please the industry, and take risks.
Okay. Did you have your final question?
Thank you.
And then once you've asked that, would you please hand the microphone to Reuters over there?
Aaron Sheldrick, Reuters. In starting up the first two nuclear reactors at Sendai plant, there was criticism that the NRA had ignored even the IAEA standards on assessing risk from nearby volcanoes. What's your comment on that, and have you had any discussions with the NRA over this issue? Thank you.
This mission didn't go into the precise assessment of specific plants. Anyway, that would not be possible with only 19 people for 12 days. I mean, so frankly speaking, no, we didn't specifically look at this problem. What we were looking at is more the infrastructure, legal, regulatory, and the way they apply this infrastructure. We didn't go into any specific technical problem related to a specific plant.
Sorry, could I just quickly ask, is it a fair criticism, though, in general? Was that a fair criticism at the time? Are you able to comment on that?
No, again, we didn't look at the assessment of specific plants. So I cannot, frankly speaking, I cannot tell you whether they applied or not the safety standards concerning volcanoes. What I can tell you is that in the domain where we have assessed or discussed with NRA, I would say that they generally comply with the safety standards, and when they don't, we highlighted the areas of improvement they should follow. But I'm sorry, I cannot tell you seriously anything about specific problems, which are of course very important problems.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Omota?
This is Omuta from Asahi newspaper. In 2007, there was a last IRRS mission taking place in Japan. When that took place, with regard to the safety review, as Mr. Tanaka, Chairman Tanaka said earlier, the safety during the operation is quite important, and there is a recommendation the inspection is conducted to ensure the safety during the operation. So there are certain areas. Have you identified any areas that you haven't seen sufficient improvement since the last recommendation in 2007? And then 2007 there was a recommendation made, but if there are still areas for improvement pertaining to the areas identified in 2007, what's your comment? And do you think it's okay for the facilities to continue to operate under such a situation?
Thank you for this question. I take this opportunity to say that we didn't review NRA now in comparison with the situation in 2007. Our approach was that NRA is a new organization, so we don't take them accountable for what happened in 2007. And I also take this occasion to say that Gustavo and myself were at the end of the mission in 2007. And the discussion we had at that time was extremely tough. The change in the spirit of NRA compared to what was the regulatory body in 2007 is tremendous. Now we have people that are open, that are willing to progress, and that are really ready to accept advices, which was not necessarily the case in 2007. But to go back to your question, no, we have assessed NRA as a new organization, which I think is actually, and of course some themes like inspection are still there, and we made advice. The only thing with operational safety, as I said, is that this is an area that will require a lot of attention and a lot of resources from NRA, and this is why we have mentioned it as an upcoming challenge.
Thank you. Associated Press? Can we pass the microphone to Associated Press, please?
Maria Miguchi with the Associated Press. I have a question about some items that you mentioned as areas for a possible improvement. For example, probably strengthen competency or skills of staff, and some suggestions for amending relevant legislation for inspection. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on that and probably give some examples that you see and that it could be some changes.
Okay. I'll start. Thank you very much for the question. I'll start with the inspection, and if you want more detail, I will ask my colleagues to elaborate more. What we found is that the system that is regulating or that is defining the framework for inspection is very complex and very rigid. And we find, for example, that there is a system of what we call reactive inspection, meaning that if something that goes wrong is detected in a plant, immediately the inspector should go, have access to any part of the plant and see what's happening in order to take, reactive decision. Or at any time and for any plant, the inspector should be allowed to go where they want. And there is a comprehensive framework for inspection in Japan, but it doesn't give enough freedom for the inspectors to react immediately and to provide with results. Also, I think that there is maybe a safety culture or questioning attitude problem. We believe that it would be better if in some cases the inspector had more distance with the utility to be more critical, and this points out to the second subject. Now, for development of human resources, as I said, the requirements put by NRA are more and more ambitious. They want to implement continuous improvement of safety, and also they will have more and more work because of the installation restarting. And of course, this demands additional human resources, and this is why it's important to modify the to enhance training and attract also competent and experienced people. And I think one key point is to increase the attractiveness of NRA so that NRA becomes an institution where young people or competent people want to come and be proud of belonging to.
Thank you. Did you have another question?
Can I?
Yeah.
Can I ask Chairman Tanaka to respond to what Mr. Jame just said? Is that okay? Thank you.
こういった能力っていうのは能力とかその安全部から情勢
regarding the staff or promoting the safety culture, I would say that this is the kind of the custom that people would have to conduct. However, there is no limit as to what we should target towards to. Therefore, we would have to ask ourselves in order to promote further of establishing and promoting the safety culture, which is quite important. Now, when it comes to the inspection, as Mr. Omuta from Asahi newspaper had asked prior to this, the inspection itself is not really of a problem per se, but as Mr. Jame have mentioned, it is more to do with the flexibility, or rather, there was a question regarding whether we do it based on the checklist or not, and the idea is to make it more flexible so that the inspector, when they go into the site and do the walkthrough in the facility, the inspector would be able to evaluate the level of the workers and at the same time be able to explicit their empowered capabilities in order to provide necessary suggestions. And since its inception of NRA, we have been mentioning that there are some problems related to the method of inspection. And I would say this is of the flaw that the national government have established, because when it comes to the operators, when they pass a certain inspection, they kind of tend to think that they are already at the safe field. Therefore, I think that this is one of the area that there is a flaw amongst the operators, that they have to do more in order to make it better. Now, when the IAEA standard is concerned, the primary responsibility lies on the operators. Therefore, the question arises as to how best we're able to establish that notion amongst the operators. And I think that with that in place, the NRA inspection would be able to be done in a better state. Therefore, when it comes to the way of how the inspection is done, we have to talk to the operators more thoroughly in order to improve the inspection methods. Therefore, this is the area that was pointed out by the IAEA IRRS mission this time. That's my understanding. I am from Energy Forum. We are the magazine company. My name is Ishii. Now, as is indicated in the release that you have provided to us, you have mentioned about some of the good practice, and I would like to hear from you more specifically as to what exactly were the good practices vis-a-vis 2007. And if you feel that there are good practices against what the other countries are doing, then I also would like to know of that as well.
Again, I mentioned the difference of attitude of the staff, but we assessed NRA as a new organization. And the good practices we have found is that in such a short time, the government of Japan on one side and NRA on the other side have put up a transparent and the system where the regulatory authority is competent and has increased power. So very frankly, it's not so much the fact they are competent and independent that have increased power that is a good practice. What we value as a good practice is the reactivity of the government and of NRA. What they've done in such a short time is really commendable. So this is really the approach we had. I think that's all. Okay.
Who's next? Do you have a preference? How about the gentleman? Yeah.
I'm a freelancer. My name is Kamide. I have a question to you, Philip. I think you may know that when it comes to here in Japan, especially regarding the restart of reactors, the national public, majority of the national public are against the restart of the reactor. This is reflecting the accident in Fukushima Daiichi. Now, in several months or in several years' time, the restart is taking place, and I think that you have said that as a precondition. And I think that this would affect the way the IAEA takes the actions. But if this response is heard by the Japanese public, they might not necessarily fully in agreement with that. But let's say that even if you are to approve on the restart of the reactor, Mr. Tanaka earlier humbly have mentioned that the operators are still not there yet at the full state to reoperate the facility. However, the Prime Minister Abe always says that when the regulation is concerned, we have the world's top-class regulatory environment in place. Therefore, it's safe. So it seems like Prime Minister Abe is leaving NRA to hold its responsibility for the restart. Therefore, I would like to hear from you of what you're thinking towards this would be.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Lentejo had some comment.
No, simply to clarify that it's not part of the mission of or the agency mandate to approve any mandate or any policy or any authorization which is the full responsibility of the national authorities, and in this regard, anything touching nuclear safety with the previous report of the Nuclear Regulation Authority in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to the next question. Any more questions?
すみません、テレビ朝日吉野
I'm
と
from
申し
TV
ます。
Asahi. My name is
よろしくお願いし
Yoshino.
ますジャメさんお願いしま
I have
す。
a question to Mr. Jame.
原子力規制委員会はですね、昨年
last year,
高速増殖炉モンジュに対して、安全が担保されるまでですね、安全が担保このままで安全が担保されないということで、
that the safety in regards to Monju, the high-speed breeder reactor,
運営していますが、
have mentioned that this is still not safe. This is currently being operated by JAEA, and I think that NRA have made the recommendation to follow the rule. Therefore, I would like to hear from you, Mr. Jame, as to whether you've evaluated on the NRA's decision towards Monju.
Again, we cannot, in such a short time, with such a small number of people, make a serious assessment of the safety of particular plant, and it is not, as Juan Carlos said, the purpose of this mission. The purpose of this mission is to review the regulatory framework and the way it's applied in Japan. So it's not at the level of a particular plant; it's at the level of a general frame and the way it's applied. What I can tell you maybe in relation to Monju and it has some relation is that one recommendation we have made is that NRA writes an enforcement policy so that they clarify their approach, the criteria, and the way they will proceed when they see that a utility is not complying with the requirement. But no way we can say anything about Monju itself.
Mr. Lentijo?
No, you allow me totally concur with Philip's statements. Maybe if you allow me, I would like to say that this recommendation from NRA or this decision from NRA is clearly aligned with the new framework of independence of the regulatory authority. And I think it's a very good test for the NRA to exercise this independent role.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. Okay. The lady in the middle.
Karine Nishimura from Agence France Presse. Even if the AEA doesn't want to answer the question of my colleague, our articles will be read by the general public all around the world and not only in Japan. So I would like to ask exactly the same question to Mr. Tanaka. What do you think about the fact that more than 50% of the Japanese people are against the restart of the nuclear reactor? And what do you think about the Abe Prime Minister way of speaking to the general public?
今のご質問は今回の IRRS のレビューの範囲の外でありますけれども、
outside of the scope of the IRRS mission, but this is something that I have always been saying in different venues, is that so upon restarting, the certain level of safety is ensured or not. This is something that we scrutinize and evaluate, and whether the plant is restarted or not actually depends on the decision made by the stakeholders, such as the local residents, the local government, local municipal government, and also the utilities. So NRA does not judge whether the plant should be restarted or not. I have been saying this repeatedly.
My name is Atsuko Masano, freelance journalist. I have a question to Mr. Jame, please. You mentioned repeatedly that you didn't assess the specific facilities or examples, but how could you, for example, how did you evaluate the ability of the regulator? For example, enforcement is the key. As you mentioned, he also mentioned that enforcement is the key. And then I should think that you could at least take some examples to assess the ability of the regulator of this new administration, this committee. So that reporter take the example of Monju. Monju was pointed out by NRA that they were against hundreds of misaction or against the regulations, the very important regulations. But this committee did not, they didn't deny they denied the ability of the Monju's
Let me switch to Japanese. So the Monju operator is not equipped with the sufficient capability. It's something that NRA pointed out. However, NRA did not deauthorize or take away the license from Monju operator. And I believe that the taking away the license is the starting point to judge whether the NRA is the credible authority in the nuclear or not. And how would you evaluate? How else were you able to evaluate whether NRA is the established authority in the field of nuclear?
First, to take back the case of Monju, as I said, taking a safety decision in a specific case requires very serious assessment, consulting many documents, making studies, and so on. So this is a huge work, and this is much more that a team of 17 or 19 experts can do in 12 days. So I would be very embarrassed if we had said anything like Monju should be stopped and so on. We didn't have enough. We would not have enough time. Besides this, these safety decisions are typically the national responsibility, and this is not the mandate of our mission. On the other hand, what we did is that we looked at the system, at the way NRA is proceeding in general, not in specific case, but to produce enforcement. And this was one of our recommendations, that they formalize better what could be the different step, what could be the different gradation in the enforcement, and this is typically what the safety standards say. But there are also safety standards, for the safety of a particular case. But this was not the mandate of the mission. And anyway, we could not do it, given the work it requires.
Thank you. Next question. Do we have any more questions?
Mr. Hanada.
Mr. Hanaka?
Hanada.
Hanada, sorry.
NHK の花田と申します。
My name is Hanada
ジャメさんに2点
from
伺わせてください。
NHK. I have two questions
1点
to
目は
Mr.
今回
Jame.
の
First
この
question It's about the premise, the basic assumption of the review, and the view that NRA is still a very young organization. Did you evaluate NRA as a toddler, a young organization, or did you evaluate an NRA thinking that NRA is a mature organization? The second question is about the flexibility, and so I believe that the flexibility contains whether it means that the facility inspection should be more flexible.
There is no difference in the IRRS mission whether you're assessing or reviewing a young regulator or a mature regulator. So anyway, the mission is reviewing the same. Now, we are not completely blind. We know that NRA's existence is only 3 years. And this is why, by the way, we said that there are future challenges like operational safety that will have to be developed, considering, the fact that NRA is a young regulator, and also that potentially there are a lot there are potentially installations that will restart. So we knew it was young. We took, it was in our mind, but it didn't change the way or the criteria we used to review them. Flexibility of inspection, it means that, as I explained, that we believe, or according to the safety standards, the inspectors should have more flexibility in what they decide, where they want to go, what they can, what additional inspection they can perform than they have today. So, and this is according to the safety standards, the IEA safety standards. Sorry.
Okay. Any further questions?
Nagao from Kyoto Press. Question to Mr. Jame.
今回のですね、良好事例で
This good practices following learning the lesson from the Fukushima Daiichi accident and reflecting the lesson was reflected quickly and effectively in the new regulatory framework. And one of the examples listed here is a natural hazard or natural disaster. In the case of Fukushima Daiichi, tsunami was the primary cause of the accident, it is said. And when we cover the NRA, when we listen to NRA, NRA doesn't seem to, we overhear that NRA doesn't seem to be too interested in tsunami or natural disasters. And did you sufficiently check or scrutinize the process of NRA in incorporating the natural hazards in their, say, assessment activities?
What seemed clear to us is that the requirement of NRA led to very significant improvements from the tsunami point of view in the plants. I mean, you have, and also, I'll leave I will stop here. But so what we saw is that there is a lot of care taken by NRA and corresponding requirements, so that natural hazards are taken into account in the improvement that are made in plants. Here, this is what we believe and what we saw. And when we see when we went, for example, to Takahama, we saw clearly that there were modifications in the plant in order to prevent the flooding effect of a tsunami. So we saw it.
Great, thank you very much. I believe there are no further questions. Am I wrong? No further questions. Any concluding remarks from you're finished? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. System now? Can we shut down the system so that also those, because
Yes.
it's important. Yes, sir. Yes, of course.